Love Your Kitchen, Designing the Heart of the Home, proudly sponsored by Blum, the podcast where we explore the art of crafting your dream kitchen. I'm your host, Faye Newman, a freelance kitchen designer with a passion for creating spaces that truly reflect the heart of the home. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Love Your Kitchen podcast. As ever, thank you very much for joining me. Today's episode, I'm going to be focusing on 5 essential design factors that you can bring into play into your kitchen design to ensure that it's maximising the overall efficiency of the space. I think it's so important for such a highly functioning room to make sure that the kitchen is working, with you and not against you. Like, you don't want it to be a hindrance. And also, because we're all just living such busy lives now, there's so many amazing opportunities out there that we all want to be involved with. Or it might be that you've got, a young family, or you're trying to do full-time work as well as, run a family and be, the main cook in the house, or whatever your setup is. Usually what I'm finding now is efficiency with cooking, but also the functionality of the space is really important, but also the durability of the materials as well. So this specific sort of episode has been tailored to or for busy households to just increase the overall efficiency of the space. What we'll be covering is how to choose a door that is, durable, but also resist sort of finger marks and, chips or scratches. We'll also be looking at 3 game-changing appliances, one of which that can halve your cooking time. And also we'll look at the hard surfaces as well. I think these are quite overlooked sometimes, which will be like your worktops and your flooring to help with ease, but also from a safety perspective, especially if you've got, younger family members, shall we say, racing around everywhere. So let's start with tip number 1. This is prioritising durable door finishes and hardware. So this is probably, I would say, the most essential one of the 5 to think about. It's usually the first choice that you make, like what sort of style of door you want to go for, whether it's like modern, traditional, but this is actually looking into the, the materials that those doors are made of. I would say that the foil wrap door would be the best route to go down if if you're in a family environment and you're concerned about maybe your kitchen getting destroyed after 5 minutes of install, getting drawn on, if the scooters racing around, whatever it might be. I'd say foil wrap doors are going to be your best friend from a durability perspective. The reasons for this is, especially sort of with a shaker door, they're wrapped individually, the 5 pieces. So usually if you've got a shaker door, you've got 2 verticals, you've got a top, a bottom, and then a middle panel. So that's classed as a 5-piece shaker style door. If you go down the foil route where they're all wrapped individually, that works, really well, because you can get vinyls that are more cost effective, but they're almost like vacuum formed over the top of the door. You can get an edge at the back that can peel over time, even if it's a good quality vinyl. So that's why a individually wrapped door is always sort of a really good option to go down. If it's a case of you're going for a slab door, what you can do is go for what's called a cut and edge door, which doesn't sound very nice. But this is where maybe it's the same material as your cabinet material. It's got, a 2mm edging, or maybe a really small sort of edging going all the way around. But again, it's really durable and it's like a laminate facing door as opposed to a painted. I would say that those types of doors are more inexpensive to replace if you ever need to, but also harder to damage. The only issue is if you do damage it, you have to replace the door. They're really hard to touch up because a laminate will be obviously a laminate. And, if you're going for like a wood grain sort of foil shaker door, it's really hard to touch it up because you have to touch it with like a pen or like with paint. So you can see the differences of materials. Of course, painted options is also a very popular route to go down. I think, everybody now wants to incorporate as many natural materials as they can within the space. Obviously, that costs more to do. So if you're concerned about the, overall cost, and maybe if you have got little ones and you're thinking about damage control over the next sort of few prevalent years. Maybe, you know, this would be where the foil wrapped door comes into play. If you are wedded to going for a painted door, that's absolutely fine. A few things that I would make sure that the undercoat is colour matched to the top coat. So this sounds like quite an obvious thing to think about, or what you would suspect for all furniture suppliers, but it's not the case. Normally you do have a lighter, maybe like a white primer underneath, and then just paint, you know, the colour on the top, whether it's a dark sort of charcoal colour like the kitchen that I'm sat in, or whether it's like a taupe or a cashmere, which is like a warmer tone of a neutral. You can still see the white sort of chips, you know, and scratches once that top coat is, you know, damaged. So I would be really mindful and would make sure that you're looking to go for the colour primer matched route. Naturally, if you do get dents, chips or scratches in it with a painted door, you can at a later stage resand them down and paint them. So again, the timeless element is there, but of course that's quite a costly and time-driven thing to do. And if you're, you know, somebody that doesn't have a lot of time, it's just going to be one of those tasks that just never get done. So that's something to think about. When we're actually looking as well at the finish of, you know, on your doors, if you're looking to go for a matte finish or even like a gloss finish, you can really see sort of the finger marks on your doors, especially if you're going down the handleless kitchen route. So if you are going down the handleless kitchen route, I would 100% make sure that you're looking at going and working with a supplier that has an anti-fingerprint like top coat on it. The way that it works is it just resists the moisture and the oil on your fingertips. So again, you just, even if you press it, you can't see any residue left on the doors. They are amazing. So again, it just means that you don't have to wipe your doors down every 5 minutes, and your kitchen is just working better for you and saving you time from a cleaning perspective. Something else to note as well is maybe if you can't invest in the anti-fingerprint sort of finish, because it can be quite an uplift to go for that, you can look to go for a wood grain. Even if it's a slab door and you're looking to go for a handleless look, you can go for one with more of a texture on, and that will hide, or like a pattern that will hide, you know, the finger marks. It's purely when it's a solid block colour, especially like dark colours, you can just really see the finger marks. So that would be sort of a top tip to think about from there. Next to think about is handle choice. Of course, there's so many to choose from. As I mentioned, handleless will come with finger marks if you're not careful from a material perspective. But something I just wanted to mention on handle choice is if you're going for a handle that, say if it's like a bar handle and it's got open ends, just be mindful, you could potentially be catching yourself on these all the time. I do it because I'm the perfect height. If I've got a dressing gown on, I always get caught on them, you know, as I'm walking past. So that's the same for your kitchen. Tip number 2 is to invest in time-saving appliances. So of course, this needs no introduction. The more efficient your appliances are, the quicker your cooking time is. So therefore, from an efficiency perspective, it just, and from a usability perspective, it just enhances the overall experience for you and allows you to spend more time with your family as opposed to being in the kitchen. So 3 appliances that I want you to think about is going for and looking down the hot tap route. So this will be like a boiling water tap. This is an absolute must-have for speed. I think waiting for a kettle now is a very traditional way of cooking, and it can just waste so much time. It's amazing the efficiency that you feel going from a kettle to using a kettle daily to then having an instant boiling water tap. Like the time that you save from having to wait for it is amazing. My parents have just made the switch and they were very, I would say, against, losing the kettle, because it's just so, it's just been the way that it's done for so many years. So they were really concerned about the safety elements of a hot water tap, and just they didn't, they wasn't seeing the value in the uplift. So it took them a while, but they've literally changed their existing mixer tap to an instant sort of hot tap. So it's a quicker one that they've gone for, and they said now they would never look back. And it's one of those, like, once you get used to using a hot tap, you literally won't look back. I think as well, I find that with clients that you might be mindful of going for a boiling water tap, especially if you've got children. You're worried about the safety element, and to be honest, you're not on your own. I think whenever I suggest incorporating a hot tap into a household, with children especially, it is always, something that you're mindful of, and rightly so, but just be sort of open to the idea and know that there's lots of safety measures that's been incorporated into them now, like insulated sort of spouts, and different safety springs. And the way that usually you turn them on isn't just an easy set way, or it is for an adult, but when you're looking at it from a child's perspective, there's lots of components to turn on in order to get it to a boiling level. So it's definitely still worth the investment and safe to use for children. And normally as well, something that you can do is, if you've got a local showroom like nearby, what you could do is ring them and just see whether they've got a hot tap on show. They usually have it as their main working kitchen, and see if you're happy with the usability of it, or try it in different locations. I know that Kruger, for instance, they're based in Manchester. They're normally at loads of exhibition events, but also they've got their base in Manchester where you can actually go and feel how the mechanism works, to get it to the boiling water, just to make sure that you're comfortable with that. So that would be my game changer sort of an appliance, number one. The second is incorporating a combination oven, microwave and grill. So I would say from a cooking perspective, everyone's going more towards steam now than microwave. However, if you are a busy household, this is the appliance that will halve your cooking time. Because you've got the ability to microwave at the same time as using the oven, it means that you've got the efficiency and the speed of a microwave, but then you're getting sort of the crisp and the sort of the roast elements from both the grill and the oven side of it as well. So if you think about your jacket potato, we don't have a microwave at home at the moment, so it takes at least an hour to cook, one or more jacket potatoes. Whereas if you put it into a microwave, it could take 5-6 minutes, dependent on the size of it. I've almost forgot how long it takes on a microwave now because I've been without one for so long. But it just shows you the cooking time difference. So imagine combining those for, everything, whether you're doing a roast chicken, whatever it is, it just will halve your time. And it will mean that, from an efficiency perspective, you can just get through meals quicker if you are just on a really tight schedule. And what's great now as well is a lot of the combination oven, microwave and grills, they've usually got it sort of across all appliance brands now. So say if you want to match your oven and then go for your combi, there's lots of different price points to go for. It's not like a really new thing to try out. And if it's been around in the kitchen industry for quite a few years now, so there are different options that you can go for from a price perspective, different specs, for both the single oven and the combis, whereas you used to have to go for the really high spec ovens to match the combination, because it used to be a product that wasn't as accessible as it is now. So don't be too alarmed or think, oh no, it might be out of my price points. I'd just double check, do your research and see if you can find one within sort of the bracket that you're hoping for. Something else to note on this is, because it is a microwave, you do have to have a larger ampage of cable like you do if you were to go for an induction hob. So just be mindful of that and let your fitter know, or your electrician know, that you're looking to go from maybe a double oven setup to a single oven and a combination of a microwave and grill setup. Next is incorporating a waste disposal. So again, this is just one of those things that if you have one, you can't go back. I think, for me, we've got one at home. The only sort of issue with it, I would say, is because it is fixed to the bottom of your plug, and essentially it's where you scrape your plate into. You rinse it down, and then basically it's like a food muncher. So you scrape all of your, ends of carrots, any stalks of broccoli, anything like that. You just scrape all of that into your sink and also on your plates as well. And then it munches everything up, and then it goes into your sewage system. So these, from a time perspective, it's just, really easy to throw everything in, wash it all down, and then, it grinds away. Also, from an odour perspective, it saves the amount of bin cycles you might need to change. So if you're putting a lot of fresh produce at the moment in your bin, naturally, it smells. You've also got options, obviously, to go for a food bin as well. But if you're a busy household and you're just looking at ways to be really efficient, I would definitely consider going for a waste disposal. We've got one at home and it is just an absolute game changer, and it's just so much easier to wash everything away in the sink than having to, grab one plate, move it, scrape it to the bin, grab another. Likewise, pick as much up as you can from a peelings perspective and put it in the bin. It just helps from a day-to-day perspective. If you are sort of thinking, oh, Faye, sounds like a great idea, but again, I'm concerned about the children and, the safety elements involved with it, of course, this has been considered. So InSinkErator is the waste disposal unit that I've always sort of, used with clients, should we say, or recommended to clients. They have something now called the Cover Control Plus, which is actually, it means that you don't have a button on the side that you press anymore. It means that you actually have a plug at the top that you have to, so you push all the food down, keep the water running, and then you've got a plug that fixes on the top. You turn it so that the magnets align, and then it grinds everything inside. So you haven't got to think about hands going down into the waste disposal or anything like that. I also think as well that when you're looking at, things to take out of your overall kitchen quotation, that the waste disposal unit is maybe one of the first things to go because it's an added extra. But again, from a usability perspective, if you are a busy household, I would just be mindful of that and, maybe do a bit more research, read the reviews, and just see, if that's something that you can invest in to help save you the time in the future. Tip number 3 is choose your worktop for safety and low maintenance. So everybody loves a low maintenance life, in sense of you want your materials to work with you. You don't want to have something that you're constantly having to sand down, re-oil, things like that. So that is, what we're going to be talking about, making sure that you've got low maintenance materials that can really work, well within your space and the uses that you need from your kitchen. So the best materials to use from a worktop perspective, I'd say from a functional element, are ceramic work surfaces. They're, the most durable and they're heat resistant. They can have a tendency to chip. That's the only thing. So if you drop a tin on the side of, where your sink cutout is, for instance, because of, just how the tendency of how the material is, if it catches at the wrong point, it can chip it. So there is a lot online about that. However, from a day-to-day functionality perspective, a ceramic worktop is, the way forward and is the most durable out of all of the worktops out there. The worktop that closely follows this would be the Quartz worktop. So again, this is a worktop that is a ground down version of a natural stone, like a granite, and then it's set within a resin, which means that, again, you've got the repeat patterns, but also it's less porous than most granites. Some granites can be, quite dense, so therefore they're not very porous, but a lot of them, it is considered that the resin does just help and make sure that that liquid isn't being absorbed into that material. So if you're worried about sort of staining or anything like that, again, Quartz is followed closely, to the ceramic worktop, whereas the ceramic worktop just won't mark. If you are sort of thinking, oh, okay, we don't really want to go for a solid stone worktop, maybe we love the look of wood, or maybe from a cost perspective, you've got to go down the laminate route. If you like the look of wood, personally, I would not go for a whole kitchen with a wooden worktop. And I know I talk so much about using natural materials, sustainability, but for me, from a function perspective, having to re-sand down and, oil specific areas and things like that, I personally don't have time for that. So I know that a lot of my clients and you guys listening won't have either. So just be really mindful if you are going for a solid wood worktop, just be mindful and, ask beforehand what the upkeep of said wood is. Naturally end grain. So if you've got sort of butcher blocks and things like that, they're really durable because it's like the end grain of the wood. So that might not need to be as finished as much as, say, like a full stave piece of material that you've got, horizontally going around the rest of your kitchen. But yeah, definitely I would be looking at going for alternatives to wood. If you love the wooden look, so maybe go for a square edged worktop as opposed to maybe the ball nose laminate worktop, because it looks more like a solid wood and you're getting the break and the pattern of the wood that you might be really drawn to. But then from a durability perspective, it's just a lot easier from an upkeep perspective, and it's low maintenance, which is the key for tip number 3. A really simple factor that you can think about is actually going for a worktop that's more patterned over plain. Naturally, if you go for a worktop that doesn't have lots going on in it, there's not a lot of pattern or marble effect or any sort of mirror looks or anything like that, it's going to show more crumbs, marks, that sort of thing. Whereas if you've got a quite busy worktop, it can be more forgiving, shall we say, if you've got patterns and if you've got certain elements. If you haven't managed to wipe something down straight away, you won't be as prevalent and you won't see it. Something to think about from a safety perspective. So again, this would be, I'd say, more directed at children, but equally, if you catch yourself on these corners, it can still be really painful because of the, especially if it's a solid surface material like a stone. Obviously, they're, extremely tough and heavy. So if you're knocking yourself into it, it can cause bruising. I would say for any worktop overhangs, more than say like the edge of your worktop, which is like 20 mil, I would say to get the corners rounded off. You don't necessarily have to go for a massive round corner if that doesn't suit the overall aesthetic. Say if you're going for quite a modular, seamless look or quite a modern kitchen and you're not wanting to go for like a traditional curve, I would just make sure that you've rounded those corners off by at least sort of like 50 mil. Just so again, you don't have to think about, scratches on that section. And of course, just make sure that you've got seats there all the time. So if you have got children running around, they're not, running around the island and then hitting themselves because they haven't quite seen where that worktop height is. This happened to me in a snooker club when I was younger, and we were just running around, couldn't see anything, and then I had to walk around with a black eye for ages. So I would highly recommend this if you've got, small children, and also if you just don't want to catch yourself as you're walking around everywhere. Tip number 4 is build a foundation with durable, child-friendly flooring. So I think flooring is one of the last decisions that usually happens in a kitchen process. You've obviously focused on the functionality of the space. You've found your overall colour scheme. You have, you've picked your sort of door style, that sort of thing. And then usually it means that you can take all those samples to a flooring supplier and then start looking and establishing what type and, what, colours of flooring you want to go for within your space. So I'm going to run through different types for you now with the pros and cons. So top recommendation number 1 is LVP, which is luxury vinyl planks, or LVT, like luxury vinyl tiles. This is a brilliant choice if you want a cost-effective alternative to either engineered wood or tiles, but also it's just a lot softer in terms of if you drop anything, it won't just smash straight away. It can be more forgiving. And if your son or daughter falls over, you've got to think it will be softer for them to fall on, as opposed to if you're going for solid porcelain tiles. It's also really low maintenance from a grout perspective. You're not having to, scrub the grout down or anything like that. It makes it really easy to wipe over, and use in day-to-day life. Of course, it's great for the comfort side of things, and the quietness side of things. So if you do drop, or if you're walking on the floor, you can't hear it as much as you would, a really hard surface. But something to be mindful of is if you've got any heavy sort of freestanding items sitting directly on top of the floor, it will leave sort of dents. And also sometimes, if you've got an orangery or a conservatory where you have a lot of direct sunlight hitting one specific spot in the room, from a UV perspective, it can fade. So just be mindful that you're going for like a high quality one, maybe if it's considered sort of a UV layer on, or if maybe in that particular space you could opt for going down the natural sort of engineered wood route, or go for porcelain tiles. So the second most popular flooring type to go for is your porcelain tiles. So this is the ultimate choice for long-term durability. Porcelain means that it's scratch-proof, water-resistant, which is a massive one as well. It's perfect for, large dogs, and it's just perfect in general, if you want to go for, say if this is your forever kitchen, and you want to make sure that every surface is as durable as possible. Obviously, you've got the pros of the longevity and the resistance to sort of fading. So it's different, as I mentioned, to if you were to go for like your LVP, like in where your orangery or your conservatory is. So it won't fade, which is great. Some things you've got to think about is it's very hard. So if you do land on it, it's going to hurt. Also, it's really cold. So I think it's an absolute must. If you're going for and investing in a porcelain tile, please invest in underfloor heating as well, because it's just, especially in England, if we're not in a beautiful hot country that's hot all year round, it gets really cold in the winters, and it's quite a shock sometimes when you walk in socks over a porcelain floor, especially in the mornings. So for sure, invest in underfloor heating if you're going for porcelain. Also, from a cost perspective, naturally it's going to be more, and you've got to think about sort of the grouting around it as well. You can get some that have like a really small grout on it, so therefore it's easy to maintain. But again, if you're spilling anything on it, especially if it's a really light coloured grout, again, trying to scrub that off is going to take a bit of time, and it will eat into some efficiency. Again, something to think about if we're looking to optimise the overall efficiency of your space. I would say if you're going down the porcelain route, go for the smallest grout possible, and go for quite a dark grout so that you don't get that staining. If you're going down the LVT or the LVP routes, where it's like a vinyl, I'd go for a good quality. Make sure it's laid correctly. Make sure that if you've got anything that's in direct sunlight, pop the efficient blinds in place and things to make sure that you're not going to have any movement of the LVT over time or the colour fading. And again, as I mentioned, if you are going for porcelain, also 100% go for underfloor heating. I know that's added on thousands to your cost, but it's just so cold, and it will definitely be an investment that's worthwhile later on. Tip number 5 is to optimize storage to eliminate clutter. So this is an absolute necessity when you're a busy homeowner and you need to just get to things quickly. You need to know where they are, you need to know what you've got, and if you're surrounded by clutter, it's going to make you feel more tired and worse. So this is really important, and I definitely struggle with this. I have weeks where I just have bags everywhere. Say if I'm traveling, I'm recording in different locations, I'm visiting, doing different site visits, I seem to have a bag for every occasion, and it can get quite congested. So this would be the same for your kitchen as well. So if you're not keeping on top of emptying your fridge, like checking that everything's in date in your your cupboards, if it's not set up correctly for you and easy for you to use. It might be a case of everything's just so cluttered and you're sort of in the mindset of, it's just going to take too long to sort that out. So before getting to that point, or if you're listening and you're at that point, a new kitchen is the perfect time to declutter your space. So things to think about: get rid of anything you don't use daily or weekly from the most used areas in your kitchen. If there are sort of, you know, small appliances and things like that that you do like to use, but, you know, again, it's on occasion or maybe a monthly item that you use, I would store it somewhere else to make sure that in your main sort of cooking zone, your main sort of preparation zone, you've got all of the, on the top drawers, you've got everything that you need within that vicinity and space. A really easy way to understand about everything that you've got at the moment would be to get everything out of your cupboards, pull it all on a massive pile on the floor, and then start to zone it into different categories. That will of course help you get rid of any sort of out of date food, but also it will just be, okay, how many tins do we have? You know, how easy is it for us to see all of those tins? Maybe if it's in like a big wall cabinet or a raised up wall cabinet, you know, and it will just help you think about how you use things. Like, do you need all that baking equipment? If you're a keen baker and you do sort of specific like weekly rituals or monthly rituals, and then you have maybe a festive cake cutter or something like that, yes, it's great to have all your baking stuff together, but again, could that go somewhere else so that, you know, in that baking section, you've literally got everything that you need, you know, at the front, ready to use on a day-to-day basis. Something else to include that you might not thank me for because they are more expensive would be drawers are a must over sort of hinged cabinets. And I've mentioned this on the show regularly. I think it's a really important to, you know, to talk about, because even though a drawer system, you know, costs more than the standard sort of hinged cabinets, if you go for more cabinets with a higher accessibility, it's just going to help you overall. And this stems again to the efficiency of the space. So if you've got even your dry goods in a drawer as opposed to a cupboard, you're not having to, you know, they're brought out to you. You can have them so that they have like glass slides on, so that if you're struggling to see specifically what like a tin is or something like that, you can see it from, you know, the side angle, as opposed to having to think, oh, you've got to lift each tin out to like look at it. It's just, they're far more accessible, and because they're coming out to you from a usability perspective and an efficiency perspective, you can just see everything at the back of the drawer as well as the front, and better for you to use. So especially if you are a very busy individual that's trying to maximize the overall efficiency of your space, and you just want a few imperative design features and points to add in, this would be one of them. Try and incorporate as many drawers as possible. And maybe if you don't like the look of external drawers, that's fine as well. You can have drawers that are internal with a door, or maybe you could just have one internal drawer at the top of a base cabinet. So again, your most functional elements are at the, you know, the top of your cabinet, and then maybe underneath, if you've got cereal boxes or things that just aren't needed as often, you could put those on your shelves underneath, and then access those as you would regularly with any sort of hinged shelved cabinet. So that's something I would think about, and something as well that I would look into if you are going down the drawer route is really sort of investigate the different dividers and mechanisms that are out there now. I think, you know, even just and I will probably do a whole episode on this, because I know how, you know, small accessories like this can really help the usability of your space. It might be worth me just researching and finding the best ones to, you know, to help you from an internal perspective. But even just like lid racks next to like your pots and pans section. So even if you've got a space for pots and pans, you've got a £10 non-slip mat, which you can just get from IKEA. There's, you know, racks that you could put next to it that puts your lids in. So again, you are just optimizing that whole drawer as efficiently as possible. Again, with your cutlery drawers, like your utensils, that sort of thing, working with your designer and leaning on your designer for advice behind the doors as well as externally is an absolute must. And it's it's quite good to do that. So once you've got your furniture maybe signed off, your worktop choices, colours, just have a sit down with your designer afterwards. Maybe if you've done the decluttering and you've got everything out at home that you have, to sit down and actually go through everything with you and be like, okay, what are we storing here? What are we storing here? Just to make sure that everything is accounted for. And then naturally that can evolve as you're using the kitchen, and you can add different accessories into different spaces. But at least then the initial research has been considered. Also, a quick and easy tool that I would say to introduce into, especially a family home, would be just get an integrated sort of shopping list somewhere. So again, this is a fairly, inexpensive thing to add in somewhere, whether it's on your fridge, behind a door, whatever it is. Just have a space where you can just jot down elements or items that you haven't got, that you've just run out of. Say if you've just used the last tin of beans, or the last tin of chopped tomatoes, or soy sauce has gone, or whatever it is. I have a tendency of just like leaving the empty bottles on the side, and then it triggers that I should add a list in my phone. But if you've got a space that you've dedicated to that within your kitchen, you can just jot down what you need. Even if it's like a chalkboard or something like that, they're always quite fun to introduce. It just means that, again, you can, jot it down, and then you've got everything ready to go for your shopping list for, the next big shop, as opposed to going on lots of small shops throughout the week. I know that eats into our time at home. So again, I can't imagine how it would be in a family environment. So I'm hoping those 5 essential factors have helped you with the overall functionality and efficiency of your space. I think it's really important to focus and look into all of those factors, especially if you are a busy household. I'd love to hear how this episode has helped you with your upcoming kitchen project, or maybe you're looking to incorporate a part into your design now. I'm really excited to sort of hear how we've helped you. So please do let us know on our social channels, which is at Love Your Kitchen Podcast. Equally, if you're just completely overwhelmed and busy and you're thinking, Faye, I want to work with a designer that, considers all of these factors. I'm a freelance kitchen and bedroom designer, and I can help you with your kitchen and bedroom projects. So I'd love to help. All I'd need from you is to book a discovery call on my website, which is www.fayenewmandesign.com. Fill out the information on there. We'll get a call together and start helping you with your kitchen design journey. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you have liked what we have spoken about, why not like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, what you can do is click on the notification bell to keep yourself notified of all the new content to come.